Hello, my lovies. Welcome back to another Fantasy Fiction First Friday with me, Genevieve Gravel. Today we are going to be reading Chapter 27 of The Nature of Forces by me, Genevieve Gravel. It's all about me. Okay, for real though, I gotta be honest, I really hate this background. Like, I recently changed rooms with my son, and even though I have this kind of the same amount of space, it's not the same shape of space, and I cannot get my room to where I like it, like, at all. So sorry. Ramon dreamt of Amber nightly. He was bewitched. He could see her bare body and smell the sweet perfume of her. He could feel her soft, smooth skin on his. He dreamt of her riding a chariot, so alluring. Her hair flowed in the wind behind her bare back. Her slim waist, her small bosoms, and slender hips aroused him. Her lush lips and golden eyes gleamed with a sadness despite the smile she had always adorned. I can't fucking read. His hunts were no longer to bring resources and precious food to the people. He was now hunting for a stolen moment with Amber. In the thick, black night, Ramon awoken to her caresses. He raised both of his arms to embrace her. They locked in a passionate embrace and began to make love with a fury. The pair of lovers were startled to hear something. It crept through the night with a gleam in its eye and crouched as he stalked its prey. Its coat gleamed with the movements of its muscles in the light of the torch, and a low rumble came deep from within his chest. "Is it a cat?" Amber whispered as she climbed off of Ramon and began to dress. He responded, "I think it's a jaguar. My father told me stories of a hunt in the southern grasslands, before the storm. He told me that the cats were as large as life, and the beast that kills in a single bound of 200 pounds or more. My grandfather had encountered many different cats, all in different colors, some alone and some in prides. I would have never believed him, but he brought home a claw. He wore it around his neck, proof of the hunt, proof of the kill, and proof of the tail of the large cat. That cat must be perhaps one of the last of its kind. They're haven gone. They must be migrating north in search of food, just like us all." Ramon responded while he slowly dressed. His eyes were wide in search of the large cat in the dark. "Do you think it wants to eat us?" Amber asked Ramon. "He's outnumbered. Besides, we're human, and who would try to eat us?" Ramon said arrogantly. How could he not know everything is food for something else? It's how life survives, Amber thought. "I don't know, insects, snakes, possibly other large cats," Amber responded teasingly as she lied to her back and reached up to his thick neck, pulling him down to meet her in a kiss. He pressed his large body against her small frame, engulfed in his kisses, and he took her hand in his. And a bright, vibrant roar screeched out, and then teeth sank into his neck. Ramon's flesh ripped open, exposing a deep red flesh below the surface. The blood pooled on her, and the cat tugged and pulled at Ramon from his lever. Reaching out and grasping at his hand, Amber pulled at Ramon, trying in vain to free him from the grip of death. Ramon's eyes remained fixed on Amber's as he struggled to free himself. His mouth opened to scream, but not a sound could escape. His hands broke free of her tight grip, and the large cat pulled him up a tree. He reached out in the dark. Blood rushed down his arms. The cat slowly pulled and tugged at Ramon's flailing body. His clothing tore, and his fresh flesh ripped open on the bark of the tree. Taking a moment to regain hold, the cat's massive fangs released and then sank in again. Ramon's screams of pain rang out into the silent twilight. Ramon's hand reached out in the dark, frantically searching for something to grip hold of. He found a branch and gripped at it, and his arm under the savage bite began to rip. His flesh was torn, his muscles began to tear as the arm dislocated, and another scream of pain rang out. With uncanny speed and strength, the cat played with his prey. Amber scanned the tree helplessly for her lover. She felt around the dimly wooded floor, lit by the dying torch, to find Ramon's bow. She felt around the dead leaves and plants, and heard them crunch under her hands as she located the outline of a single arrow. A roar screeched out. The otherwise stealthy foe had fallen with a thud on the ground below. Amber rushed to the side of the dark, motionless mound. She found the cat near death. As its eyes began to lose shine, she placed her hand to its back and softly calmed the creature. Her powers were not strong enough to bring this creature of the night back to life, and in an unusual act of mercy, she snapped the cat's neck. "I'm sorry," she cried softly. High in the tree above, Ramon's blood flowed. His limp body dangled from the eave of a branch. He tried to hold on desperately. His flesh tore, his muscles ripped apart. A single tendon held his body together, and his body spun, hanging from the tree, and unconscious from the shock and pain. The single tendon began to tear with a squishy rip. His body fell to the ground. Amber jumped up from the tingling sensation running up her spine. She turned to the right to find Ramon attempting to roll to the side and moaning in pain. He had begun to regain consciousness. She crawled toward him. Her hand landed on the stem of the torch. She pulled it from the muddied sand. Her hair flew out behind her. Her eyes were wide and her mouth hung open. But what she found was a sight she could never unsee. His beautiful body was mangled and torn. His strong arm, that only moments before was wrapped around her, was now hanging in the tree above his beaten body. She tossed the torch and searched for her footing on the base of the tree. Amber climbed the tree, following the path of the cat to his arm. She straddled the branch over her lover. She struggled to get the arm untangled, but the tree did not want to let go. "Let go," she demanded, and the arm broke free and fell to its owner below, landing with a swift slap across his face. She leapt to the ground, landing on both feet, only to trip over Ramon and land face first into a heap full of bloody fur and flesh. She made a paste with haste, made of her own urine and the dead leaves of the forest floor, and she began an incantation. She held his mangled arm to the socket and rubbed the mud on it, chanting for the spirit of the mountain to send a spirit guide. She asked for the spirit of the mountain to heal her lover. Liliana whispered in the wind. Her spells were not working. I mean, a flower is one thing. An arm? A human life? This was way beyond her power, and no herbs to heal even grow out here. There was no way he could make the journey to the Coven. It was a day or more hike from here. Amber began to panic. We're not even on the right mountain. Why, you fool, would you hunt the dark mountain? There's no food out here, she cried into the night. Except the jaguar, he coughed. She laughed in relief. He was awake. For all the effort she had put in, his blood had begun to clot. A flash of light blinded them both, and Ramon assumed it was a hallucination from the pain, but Amber knew better. The witch Liliana had appeared in full solid form. She took Amber's hand, standing over Ramon, and added a heaping, overflowing handful of the cat's blood to his arm. She blew on it softly, and she blew on the horrid wound softly, and the arm meshed to the bloody stump. His fingers began to move, and the blood began to dry. Amber fell to the ground in amazement. When she regained consciousness, Ramon was sitting up. He was clenching his hand to a fist and then releasing it. He repeated this several times before noticing she was awake and silently watching his every move in amazement. "Your arm is healed?" Amber said with surprise. Stuttering, "How? What are you?" Ramon stuttered in an attempt to ask. For the first time since he had laid eyes on the exquisite Amber, that moment when he had fallen in love, he had just met the one, the only. And he'd felt in that moment that he'd known her in his entire life, even if only in his dreams. And now he wondered if he had ever known her at all. Amber pulled the long golden red locks out of her face and felt the crunch of dried blood. Her eyes never left his. "It worked, but that was not of my power," she said, making no sense. And he took his hand and wrapped it around her neck with a gentle squeeze. He ran his fingers down her long neck to her chest, and then slowly unlaced the leather corset and traced the outline of her bare nipples. He began pulling down his pants while hiking up her rag skirts. He pulled at her. He kissed her hard and passionately as he entered her. Pushing and pulling, he ravaged her. Even in the wake of unexplainable trauma, he could not fight his desire for her. When he had finished, he left his lover's embrace as if she had not even been there. Ramon began to field dress the cat, hanging it from the tree that he himself had hung. It must have been 100 pounds. "I'll be a hero tonight," Roman cut into the coat of the creature. And then he cut the toe just at the nail, just as his grandfather had done a long time ago, to a much larger jaguar. And he hoisted the dead cat onto his sack with intent to pull it down the mountain slope. He stopped several feet away with the skinned cat in tow and looked back at her sitting with a confused and somewhat horrified look on her face, not sure what to say. He could not find the right words, and after a momentary pause, he looked back and found himself filled with a sense of loneliness. He looked back. She was gone. A ribbon had come out of her hair and caught on a fallen branch, leaving only proof that she had even been there. When she reached the trail, she was out of breath. Her face was flushed from running for so far, for so long. Her bike was waiting for her. She looked back as she took the bicycle by the handles and began to walk forward. Amber fell to her knees and began to wail. Tears flowed freely. Mucus ran from her nose as she clenched at her stomach. "I'm sorry." She covered her mouth with the back of her hand and begged for forgiveness of Mother Nature. Amber knew that this cat was the last of its kind, yet she chose to take its life for her personal gain. And with this single act, this single arrow, she had ended an era. The realm of the jaguar in all its majestic beauty and wonder would never again exist. Amber felt Mother Nature's pain at the loss of a child. She had not meant to run out, but she had. She could not stand the sight of Ramon, whom should lie dead, cutting open the creature that paid the ultimate sacrifice, all for his survival and her pure selfishness. Amber had committed murder, or worse, genocide. In her life, she had committed many malicious acts, most for simple amusement. Never had she felt regret until this moment. From this single act of love, she would feel deeply with regret for the rest of her days. She had chose wrong. She should have never let the cat She should have left the cat with a fighting chance. Ramon was somehow different than all the other men she had bewitched. He affected her to the soul. He was her affliction, much the way Daxter was once long ago. With Ramon, for the first time, she didn't have to resort to her charms. Being herself was enough. And this scared her more than anything that the dark wood could throw at her. The only man she had ever allowed herself to love, she pushed over a cliff. Her love was murder. All she can pay in retribution was to sit in a foggy haze and beg for Mother Nature to forgive her. And I awake each morning with more questions than answers. I know now that my dreams and my visions are real. However, I wonder, can I even trust what I see? And what was that I just saw? It was all very confusing, and I really don't understand humanity at all. And I know from the book that Celeste is my aunt and Paulo is my father, but what of the others? Who are they? Are my visions current? In real time? Are things that are yet to pass? Are things that have passed? What does it all mean? And my biggest question, the one that loomed over me constantly, was who was the threat to my beloved sister? Could it be Amber? Alexis? Celeste? How do I save her? How do I save any of us? My dreams have come to me during the times of silence on our long walks. I know now that they're not figments of my imaginations, but visions. Why does my mind's eye rest on the same people? I don't understand much of what's going on around me. All I know is I need to find my sister. I can't let her die, not so young. And at this point, we're actually older than our mother. Kahai is but 30. I'm centuries older than he is, but yet in many ways I feel like he's my elder. And at times I imagine what it would feel like to have his lips on mine. I fantasize of running my fingers down his lean stomach. But these thoughts always quickly dissipate. The witch Liliana was of my mother's generation, and she rarely showed herself in human form, but when she does, she's glorious, voluptuous, and sensual. I can feel her energy wrap around me like a warm cloak, shielding me from the world's harms. As we walk along in silence, my thoughts turn to Amber. Upon returning home and recounting the story in all of its glory for Celeste, my thoughts had turned to Amber. And her upon returning home and recounting the story in all of its glory for Celeste. She acted as if the cat dying had no effect on her. I wonder why she pretended to be so strong. I mean, why should any of us hide our vulnerabilities from those closest to us? I never had. I had always found life easier with someone to confide in. Yet Amber talks to Celeste as if it was a fun day in the peripheral sun. Amber clearly did not know that Celeste had the twins' power of magic sight to watch everything, including her tears of regret. The momentary weakness, though, I doubt if Amber cared that Celeste had been peeking. I'm sure none knew that I had. It was the witch Liliana. Amber exuberantly finished her tale of the night on the dark mountainside to Celeste. I'm aware of that, Amber, Celeste snapped back. When the witch Liliana had returned to us, however, she did not speak of what had happened with Amber and Ramon. I wonder if she knew I had witnessed it, or if she knew that Celeste had as well. I did not ask. I assumed that she did. For all I know, she's all-knowing. I know very little of her powers, but I know they far outweigh any that should be possible in this realm of existence. Not that she had needed it, but her actions, once and for all, had proved to me that she was no evil witch. She was loving and kind. Her actions were meant to keep travelers safe from what lied ahead of them. They had been warnings, not acts of terror, as all the villagers seemed to believe. Okay, so I really need to stop saying so much. Anyway, so, as I read through this story, there are certain chapters that I read that I'm so incredibly proud of myself for, and I just think they're so beautiful and wonderful, and I'm so in love with all of these characters and this journey that they're on. And then there's other chapters that I read and I'm like, okay, this is trash. I'm trash. Why would I even publish this? Why am I putting it out on the internet for other people to see? But this part of the story was really special to me. Okay, so one night, I'm taking a bubble bath and my partner's in the bathroom with me, and I mean, there may have been some devil's lettuce involved, I don't know. Anyway, and we're talking and I'm like, could a small large cat actually drag a man up a tree? And he's like, yeah, I think so. And so we started playing through it and we kind of came up with this whole, the body hanging from the tendon and that hand coming down and slapping him. He's slapped across the face with his own hand, and we thought it was so freaking funny, and I had to put it in. But my issue is that I can see this scene play out so clearly and vividly in my imagination, but it's not reading that way, and I'm failing to find the right words. Like, as you guys know, if you followed along, I don't like to put a lot of descriptors in. I'm not going to give an entire page describing a pillar. Like, there's a pillar. You can imagine a pillar. And I like to move very quickly, but I feel like this particular chapter really needs a lot more description in it, but actually finding a way to smoothly write those descriptors has been a huge challenge for me. But I think this chapter is really important, and what I want to portray, which I don't think is coming across, is the emotions, particularly of Amber. Amber, like Celeste, is incredibly self-centered and almost vicious in a way. But Amber has the power of resurgence, and Celeste doesn't have that. And that's one of the reasons why Amber is so vital to the coven, because she brings something that isn't otherwise there. And she has this power because of her empathy and because of her love of Mother Nature. And for the first time in the story, we see that in Amber, because she is so heartbroken and devastated by the death of the jaguar. Now, there may be a few other female jaguar out there, but this was probably the last male, which means that this is the extinction of this animal, and it is not the only animal that's on the verge of it, extinction. And I think Amber and really everyone in the coven have kind of lost sight of that because they live in Celeste's protective bubble. And I think they kind of take that for granted and don't really think about anything or anyone outside of that protective bubble. And so for the first time, we really see Amber kind of recognizing what's really going on in the world and maybe what's really more important. And then there's Ramon, who she's really kind of starting to despise, and she loves him as deeply as she had loved Daxter. For the first time, even though she has bewitched him, he's become something more than just a plaything for her. And so she's looking at him and she's heartbroken. She just killed this jaguar. And like I said, it's an extinction level event, and it's huge and it's heartbreaking, but it was her kill and it's her responsibility. And he's over here taking claim for her kill and celebrating it and saying, I'm going to be celebrated. I'm going to be a hero tonight. And yeah, he is bringing a lot of resources and food back to the people of Alexandria, but at what cost? And he's also claiming a kill that's not his. And so I think she's really kind of lost a lot of respect and just doesn't really want to be around him at this point. And then there's Ramon, who's like, what's going on with you? Who are you even? And I don't think he realizes that he's been bewitched by her. I think he thinks this is what love is. And he doesn't understand why she's not celebrating. He doesn't understand what just happened with his arm and why he's alive and why he has all his limbs. But they just went through this huge traumatic event together. And in his eyes, it should bring them together. And instead, she just took the fuck off. You know what I'm saying? So he's like kind of bewildered, but he's still stoked. So he's going to take his cat home to feed the people. And then there's Celeste, who's looking out, and she's been wondering, who is the evil witch of the wood? Who is this mythological, legendary creature that everyone talks about? And she's realizing that it's her nemesis. See, when Liliana died, Celeste felt a sense of justification and relief, because Celeste is a very self-centered, vengeful, jealous human being. And she was heartbroken when she found that Paulo had developed feelings for Liliana. And really that Paulo had developed feelings for anyone, because Paulo's living in this horrendous, terrific layer of just tragedy. And yet somehow there's still love there. And that comes from inside Paulo. And love is something that Celeste hasn't felt outside of what she had felt for Paulo so long ago. And it's something that she's lacking in her life and desperately wants. But she has resigned herself to the fact that she's never going to have that again. And I think that motivates a lot of what she's doing, despite the outcome. Like, she doesn't really care about the outcome. She doesn't care about what happens as a result. And Heidi, who she has no idea of humanity or community or how people act or react. So the fact that Ramon and Amber had made love after this traumatic event was very bewildering to her, and it almost to the point where she couldn't really think about it. And she's looking at Kai, who's the only man she's ever met in her life, and thinking, should I be attracted to him? But she's only attracted after she's seeing these visions of other people being intimate with each other. But I don't think she really feels that kind of attraction to him. I think it's more of a mentor or a father figure, even though he's so much younger than she is. But they are getting very close to Alexandria. They're only steps away after months on the road, trying to get there to achieve the goal. And Heidi is finding herself wondering, what exactly is the goal here? I thought I was trying to save my sister, but I don't even know what I'm trying to save her from. And then there's this whole civilization of people that need to be saved, and I have absolutely no idea how to save them or what the priority is at this point. but she's literally steps away from Alexandria, and we are moments away from the end of the story. I think a part of my issue in writing this is in my first draft, I had sent to my father to help me edit, and he line edited it, and he asked me a few questions and was trying to help me kind of get everything smooth. And he asked me, he said, how does the narrator know what's going on with everybody else? And that's kind of a hard, fast rule in writing, is that you have to know why the narrator knows this. But in my mind, when I was writing it and telling the story, it was more like an ensemble cast. Like if you're watching like a mini series or a TV show where the narrator doesn't need to know. They're the main character, but there's all these side characters doing their own stuff, and the narrator doesn't really need to know. But it's this hard, fast rule, and so I was trying really hard to adhere to the rules, but I feel like it really kind of held my creativity back and the parts of the story. And so that's it for today's episode of Fantasy Fiction First Friday. I do hope you'll hit that subscribe button and join me next month on the first Friday for chapter 28. We only have 60 pages left. We are so close to the end. Let me know down in the comments how you think the story is going to end. And also be sure to check out my Wednesday uploads of Gigi Says What Now, where I sit around and talk trash about history. Okay, remember, you are valid, you are worthy, and you are loved. Bye!